Hello, you tired little peeps. It's that time once again. So let's snuggle up fast because tonight we're traveling, back in time to walk the quiet pastures of the Roman countryside, watching over the herds of cattle and flocks of sheep that grazed the ancient hills. So if you are new to the channel or returning, liking the video significantly helps. Also, please let me know where you're listening in from and what time it is for you. Now get comfortable and let's begin. The world of the ancient Roman countryside is a world defined not by the ticking of a clock, but by the position of the sun and the slow, steady chewing of the herd. It is a world of green and brown, of soft wool and rough hide, where the silence is broken only by the lowing of a cow or the rustle of wind through the tall, dry grass. Tonight, we leave the marble noise of the city far behind. We are going out to the ager, the field, to the vast estates and the lonely mountain paths where the true wealth of the empire was counted in heads of livestock. Let us imagine, first, the landscape. It is early morning in the Italian peninsula, perhaps somewhere in the fertile regions of Campania or the rolling hills of Samnium. The mist has not yet lifted from the valley floor. It clings to the ground in soft white ribbons, obscuring the hooves of the animals that are beginning to stir. The air is cool and damp, smelling of wet earth, dew-covered clover, and the distinct musky scent of animals. Here, animal husbandry is not merely a job. It is a slow, unending cycle of care and observation. The Romans called this res pecuaria, the business of flocks and herds. It was a pursuit that demanded patience above all else. A crop might fail in a season, or a vineyard might be destroyed by a storm. But a herd is a living entity that spans generations, a slow river of life that requires a shepherd's steady hand to guide it. We begin our observation with the armenta, the larger cattle. In the Roman mind, the ox and the cow were creatures of immense dignity. They were the partners of the farmer, the engines of the plow, and the providers of milk and meat. But right now, in the quiet of the morning, they are simply massive, peaceful shapes moving through the fog. Picture a large, dun-colored bull standing near the edge of a wooden fence. His coat is thick, perhaps a bit muddy from the night's rest. He breathes out, a cloud of steam rising from his nostrils into the chill air. His eyes are large, dark, and liquid, blinking slowly as he watches the horizon. There is no urgency in his movements. He lowers his heavy head to the grass, his tongue wrapping around a tuft of green, and pulls. The sound is a rhythmic tearing, followed by the grinding of molars. It is a hypnotic sound, repetitive and calm. Tear, chew, tear, chew. The Roman writers on agriculture, men like Varro and Columella, wrote extensively about these animals, treating the subject with the seriousness of a philosophy. They categorized the breeds, the colors, and the ideal shapes of the cattle. They admired cows that were long in the body, with ample ribs and broad foreheads. They looked for animals that seemed built to endure, creatures that could walk for miles without tiring, carrying the weight of the farm economy on their sturdy backs. But out here on the pasture, away from the ink and parchment of the scholars, the reality is simpler. It is about the relationship between the animal and the land. The herd moves as a loose unit, drifting across the hillside like a shadow. They are guided by the armentarius, the cattle herd. He is a figure of solitude, standing apart, leaning on a long staff of ash wood. He wears a tunic of coarse wool, undyed and gray, and a cloak made of heavy leather to ward off the morning chill. He does not shout. He rarely needs to. A low whistle or a click of the tongue is enough to turn the lead cow away from a steep drop or a patch of poisonous weeds. The animals know him. They know his scent and the sound of his footsteps. There is a silent language spoken here, a communication built over years of shared mornings and long, sun-drenched afternoons. The ground beneath their hooves is uneven, a patchwork of grasses, wild herbs, and clover. As the sun climbs higher, burning off the mist, the colors of the pasture reveal themselves. There is the deep green of the fresh grass, the yellow of the drying hay, and the purple of the wild thyme that releases a sweet, sharp fragrance when crushed underfoot. The cattle seem to enjoy this variety. They graze selectively, their noses twitching as they seek out the most tender shoots. Let us shift our gaze now to the gregges, the flocks of sheep. If the cattle are the slow, heavy anchors of the farm, the sheep are the clouds that drift across it. They are smaller, more numerous, and their presence creates a different kind of texture in the landscape. Their wool, thick and oily, catches the light of the rising sun, creating a halo of gold around their bodies. Roman sheep were prized for this wool. It was the fabric of the empire. From the toga of the senator to the tunic of the slave, everyone wore wool. And so, the raising of sheep was a task of immense importance. But for the sheep themselves, life is a simple matter of following the leader and finding the next patch of grass. They move more quickly than the cows, a bustling, shifting mass of white and gray. The sound of the flock is a continuous, soft murmur. There is the bleat of a lamb calling for its mother, a high-pitched, vibrating sound. There is the deeper answer of the ewe, and underneath it all, the sound of hundreds of small hooves pattering against the earth, like the sound of rain falling on dry leaves. The shepherd, the pastor, walks behind them. He carries a leather bag slung over his shoulder, containing perhaps a loaf of hard bread, a piece of cheese, and a flask of watered wine, his provisions for a day that will be spent entirely under the open sky. His job is one of vigilance, but it is a quiet vigilance. He watches for the wolf, yes, but mostly he watches the sheep themselves. He checks for a limp, for a coat that looks too thin, for an animal that stands apart from the group. In the Roman territories, the practice of transhumance was common. This was the long, slow migration of flocks from the lowlands in the winter to the high mountain pastures in the summer. It was a journey that mimicked the seasons. We can imagine the beginning of such a journey. The great drove roads, the calls, were ancient tracks worn deep into the earth by centuries of passing hooves. To walk these roads with the flock is to enter a state of meditation. The pace is set by the animals. You cannot rush a sheep. You cannot force a cow to march faster than its natural gait. And so, the humans who tend them must slow down. Their heartbeats must sync with the rhythm of the herd. Step after step, mile after mile, the procession moves through the changing landscape. They pass through groves of olive trees, where the twisted silver trunks stand like silent sentinels. They pass by vineyards, where the vines are just beginning to leaf. They cross stone bridges over rushing streams, the water clear and cold, tumbling down from the Apennines. At the water's edge, the animals stop to drink. The sound of their drinking is loud in the quiet air. The slurping of water, the shaking of wet muzzles, the splash of a hoof entering the shallows. The water reflects the sky, which is now a brilliant, piercing blue. There are no clouds. The sun is warm on the backs of the animals and the shoulders of the shepherds. It is a warmth that seeps into the bones, a heavy, drowsy heat that invites a nap in the shade of a cypress tree. But the shepherd does not sleep, or at least not fully. He rests, half awake, listening. He listens to the chewing, the breathing, the living sound of the flock. This is the baseline of existence in the Roman countryside. Before the legions march, before the emperors build their palaces, there is this: the grass, the animal, and the keeper. It is a relationship as old as civilization itself, and in the Roman world, it has been refined into a system of perfect, boring efficiency. The vast estates, the latifundia, might own thousands of these animals, but for the individual shepherd, the world is small. It is defined by the distance he can see, the reach of his voice, and the specific personality of the animals in his care. As we settle into this narrative, we will explore the details of this life. We will look at the barns and the enclosures, the breeding and the birthing, the shearing and the milking. But for now, let us just stay here for a moment longer, in this open pasture. The wind picks up slightly, rippling through the long grass like waves on the ocean. The sheep cluster together, a sea of wool. The cows stand firm, like islands. The world is peaceful. There is nothing to do but watch. There is nowhere to be but here. The ancient sun continues its slow arc across the sky, marking the passage of time in shadows that lengthen and retreat. This is the quiet frontier. This is the domain of the herds. We have only just begun to walk these fields. The day is long, and there is much to see in the slow, silent lives of these creatures and their keepers. We turn our attention now from the open hills to the structures that anchor this life. The pasture is the domain of the day, but the stable is the sanctuary of the night. In the Roman world, the architecture of the farm, the villa rustica, was designed with a specific, quiet purpose: to protect the investment of the herd against the cold, the damp, and the unseen dangers of the dark. Let us walk back from the fields, following the worn dirt path that leads toward the cluster of buildings nestled in the valley. The primary structure is low and wide, built of local stone, perhaps the gray porous tufa or the harder limestone, depending on the region. The roof is tiled with terracotta, the curved imbrices and flat tegulae interlocking to form a heavy red canopy that shields the interior from the rain and the summer heat. We approach the bubilia, the ox stalls. The Roman agriculturalists were very particular about these spaces. They believed that the comfort of the animal directly translated to its strength in the field. As we step inside, the light changes instantly. The bright, harsh glare of the sun is replaced by a dim, amber twilight. The air here is warmer, trapped by the thick stone walls. It is a heavy air, thick with the scent of dry straw, old wood, and the deep, earthy musk of the cattle. It is quiet here, a muffled silence. The only sounds are the shifting of weight as a bull leans against a wooden post, or the soft swish of a tail chasing away a fly. Dust motes dance in the single shaft of sunlight that pierces through a high, narrow window. These windows are small for a reason: to keep the wind out, to keep the temperature stable. The Romans knew that sudden drafts were the enemy of the herd. Look at the floor. It is not merely dirt. It is a carefully constructed surface, paved with stone or perhaps a hard-packed mixture of gravel and clay. It slopes ever so slightly, a gentle gradient designed to let moisture drain away, keeping the hooves of the oxen dry. A wet hoof is a soft hoof, and a soft hoof cannot pull the plow. So, the floor is kept clean, swept by the stable hands with brooms made of birch twigs. The sound of the sweeping shh, shh, shh is one of the rhythmic heartbeats of the barn. Along the wall run the praesipia, the mangers or feeding troughs. These are sturdy boxes built of oak or beech, wood that has been smoothed by years of rough tongues licking up the last grains of barley or spelt. The height of the manger is calculated perfectly, It is high enough that the animal does not have to strain its neck to reach the floor, but low enough to be comfortable. Everything is measured. Everything is deliberate. Imagine the sound of the feed being poured into these troughs, the dry rustle of hay, the heavy clatter of beans or acorns. The animals approach slowly, dipping their heads. The barn fills with the sound of chewing, a synchronized grinding that echoes off the stone walls. It is a sound of contentment, of needs being met in the simplest, most fundamental way. Adjacent to the ox stalls are the ovilia, the sheepfolds. These are different. Sheep require less robust containment than the great oxen, but they require more protection from the elements. The sheepfold is often a large enclosed courtyard or a lower building with a southern exposure. The Romans understood the value of the sun. They positioned these buildings so that the low winter sun would flood into the enclosure, warming the animals, while the high summer sun would be blocked by the overhanging roof, keeping them cool. In the ovilia, the ground is covered in a deep layer of bedding, ferns, straw, or dried leaves gathered from the forest floor. It is soft underfoot. If you were to walk across it, your steps would make no sound. The sheep huddle together here at night, a single, warm organism. The heat they generate is immense. On a cold night, the air inside the sheepfold is steamy and humid, smelling of lanolin, the oil in the wool, and milk. The walls of the sheepfold are lined with hurdles, woven panels of willow or hazel wood. These texture the space, adding a roughness that contrasts with the softness of the wool. Sometimes, for the smaller lambs or the sick animals, there are separate pens, small, distinct spaces where they can rest undisturbed. There is a profound sense of security in these buildings. The walls are thick, often 2 or 3 feet deep. They stand as a barrier against the wild world outside. Inside, the chaos of nature is ordered. There is a place for the water, a place for the food, a place for the sleep. The structure imposes a calm routine on the lives of the animals, and let us not forget the pastor's connection to this space. The shepherd does not live apart from his flock. Often, his sleeping quarters are right here, adjacent to the stables. A small room, perhaps no more than a niche in the wall, with a bed of straw and a heavy woolen blanket. He sleeps with one ear open, attuned to the breathing of the room. If a cow becomes restless, if a sheep bleats in distress, he is there within moments. The boundary between the human home and the animal home is thin, almost non-existent. In the height of summer, these barns stand empty during the day, cool and cavernous echoes of the winter nights. But in the winter or during the heavy rains of autumn, they are the center of the world. The rain drums on the tiled roof, a dull, persistent tapping that induces a deep, heavy drowsiness. Inside, the animals are dry. They stand or lie in the straw, their eyes half closed, waiting. The Roman agricultural writers speak of the importance of cleanliness in these spaces. They advise removing the manure daily, scrubbing the floors, ensuring fresh air circulates without creating a draft. It is a labor of care. It is a repetitive, unending task that mirrors the cleaning of a temple. In a way, the barn is a temple. It is a temple to the god of sustenance, a shrine to the forces that keep the people fed and clothed. As we stand in the corner of the bubilia, watching the dust settle in the fading light of the afternoon, we feel the slowness of time here. The wood of the manger is worn smooth by centuries of use. The stone of the floor is polished by millions of footsteps. These buildings were built to last, to outlive the animals they shelter and the men who built them. They are silent witnesses to the cycle of birth, growth, and death that defines the pastoral life. The shadows lengthen across the floor. The amber light deepens into a rich, dark brown. The animals begin to settle for the night. A heavy bull lowers himself to the ground with a grunt, folding his legs beneath him. A sheep tucks its nose into its flank. The breathing of the herd slows down, becoming a collective rhythm, a soft wind moving through the enclosed space. The barn sleeps, and in its sleep, it is a fortress of peace. We leave the animals now to their rest within these stone walls, for there is much to discuss about how they came to be here, the careful selection, the breeding, the lineage that stretches back to the founding of the city itself. We have seen the landscape, and we have stood within the quiet shelter of the barn. Now, we must turn our gaze to the animals themselves, not as a collective herd, but as individuals. In the eyes of the Roman husbandman, an animal was a collection of specific traits, a living sculpture that could be molded through careful selection and breeding. The ancient writers, those men who spent their lives observing the res rustica, left us detailed blueprints of perfection. They described the ideal beast with the precision of an architect describing a column. Let us stand in the paddock on a bright, clear morning. The sun is high enough now to cast sharp shadows, illuminating every curve and muscle of the livestock. The farmer, the dominus, is present today. He is here to inspect the stock, to choose which animals will carry the lineage forward and which will be culled. It is a slow process, a silent evaluation. We begin with the cow. To the Roman eye, beauty in a cow was not about grace or elegance. It was about substance. It was about capacity. Imagine a cow standing before you. She is a massive creature. The ideal Roman cow was described as having a look of sourness or sternness about her. She is not a pet. She is a matriarch of the fields. Look at her head. It is large, dominated by a broad, flat forehead. Her horns are black, strong, and curved, not too wide, but not too narrow. They are weapons of defense, polished and clean. Her ears are large and hairy, twitching to flick away the flies. But it is the eyes that draw you in. They are black, large, and prominent. There is no white showing. They are deep pools of calm, reflecting the green of the pasture. Now, let your eyes travel down her neck. It is thick and long, but not too long. The most distinctive feature, the one the Romans prized above all, is the dewlap. This is the fold of loose skin that hangs from the throat. On a prize cow, the dewlap is copious, a heavy curtain of skin that descends almost to her knees. It sways gently as she walks, a sign of her robust constitution. Her body is a barrel. The ribs are wide and spacious, creating a vast cavity. This is essential, for she must have room to carry a calf and room to digest the immense quantities of roughage she consumes. Her back is broad and flat, a table of muscle. If you were to run your hand along her spine, you would feel no sharp bones, only the smooth, hard ridge of muscle beneath the hide. And the hide itself, touch it in your mind. It is not soft like silk. It is thick, yet pliable to the touch. It feels loose over the body, not stretched tight. The color varies by region. In the white clays of Umbria, the great white cattle were famous, bred for sacrifice and for pulling the heavy triumphal carts. In Etruria and Latium, the cattle were often red or dun-colored, built for the hard labor of the plow. But regardless of color, the coat is sleek, shining with health, the hair lying flat against the skin. Her legs are short and thick, like pillars. Her hooves are not small. They are large, creating a solid foundation. As she steps, the hoof spreads slightly, gripping the earth. There is a solidity to her presence. When she stands still, she looks as if she has taken root in the ground. Beside her stands the bull. If the cow is the vessel of production, the bull is the engine of the herd. He is terror and majesty combined, yet today he is calm. The Roman ideal for a bull was a creature of immense front-heavy power. His neck is thicker than the cow's, a massive trunk of muscle that swells as it meets the shoulders. His expression is more severe. His forehead is crisper, perhaps with shorter, more twisted horns. The Romans looked for a torvitas, a grimness in his face. A friendly bull was of no use. He needed to be able to defend the herd against the wolf or the bear. His chest is vast, his shoulders vast, but his hips are narrower, tapering down. He is built like a wedge. His tail is very long, the tuft of hair at the end sweeping the ground, brushing the dust. The selection of these animals was a matter of extreme care. The farmer would walk around them, checking the spacing of the teats on the cow, ensuring they were fore and well placed. He would check the veins on the belly, looking for the prominent milk veins that signaled a good producer. Nothing was left to chance. Now, let us shift our focus to the smaller, softer shapes in the adjacent pen. The sheep. Evaluating a sheep is a tactile experience. You cannot judge a sheep merely by looking, for the wool hides the body. You must get your hands into the fleece. The Roman shepherd looks for a square sheep. A long body, yes, but with a wide back and a deep belly. The wool is the treasure. The shepherd parts the fleece with his hands. He spreads the fibers to look at the skin underneath. He is looking for density. The wool should be so thick that the skin is hard to find. It should be soft, oily with lanolin, and crimped. The crimp, the waviness of the fiber, gives the wool its elasticity. He checks the belly of the sheep. A poor sheep has a bare belly, exposed to the briars and the cold. A good Roman sheep is clothed entirely, with wool growing down the legs and covering the stomach completely. The neck should be short and thick, blending seamlessly into the shoulders. And then there is the ram, the patriarch of the flock. The Romans had a specific superstition about the ram. They believed that the color of the ram's tongue determined the color of the lamb's fleece. A ram with a black or spotted tongue would produce lambs with spotted wool, which was considered a flaw for white flocks. So the shepherd opens the mouth of the ram. He pulls the tongue forward. It must be pink, pure, and unblemished. The ram's horns are magnificent spirals, curving around his ears. They are warm to the touch, vascular and alive. He holds his head high, a proud posture. His wool hangs in long, heavy locks, perhaps slightly coarser than the ewes, but abundant. This process of selection, this slow scrutiny, happens in the quiet moments of the farm year. It happens before the breeding season, usually in the late spring or early autumn. It is a time of decision. The old, the weak, the barren are removed. Only the best remain. It is a silent eugenics of the field, practiced over centuries. It is why the Roman cattle could pull the heavy plows through the clay soil of Italy. It is why the Roman wool was the envy of the ancient world. It was not an accident. It was the result of thousands of quiet mornings like this one, where a man stood in a field, looked at a beast, and decided, "This one stays." The sun climbs higher. The heat begins to radiate from the ground. The animals become lethargic. The cow lies down, chewing her cud with that mesmerizing, side-to-side motion of the jaw. The sheep cluster in the shade of a stone wall, heads down. The inspection is over for now. The choices have been made. The lineage is secure. We can almost hear the scratch of a stylus on a wax tablet as the farmer notes down the inventory, the numbers, the descriptions, the yield. It is the boring, essential data of survival. With the flock and herd selected, the real work begins. The daily management of their lives, specifically their nourishment. For an animal is only as good as the grass it eats. The animal is a furnace. It burns grass and turns it into muscle, into wool, into milk. To keep this furnace burning requires fuel, and so we move now to the subject of pabulum, fodder. In the quiet economy of the Roman farm, the management of food was an obsession. It was not enough to simply open a gate and let the animals wander. The diet was curated. It was balanced. It was a menu designed by the seasons. Let us stand in the phenile, the hayloft. It is situated high up, perhaps above the stables, dry and airy. The smell here is overpowering in the best possible way. It is the distilled scent of high summer captured in dried stalks. It smells of sweet clover, of timothy grass, of baked earth and sunshine. The air is dusty with pollen. Silence hangs heavy here, cushioned by the stacked bales. The Roman farmer knew that not all grass is created equal. The most prized of all crops for the cattle was medica, what we call lucerne or alfalfa. To the Romans, this was a miracle plant. Columella wrote that a single sowing could last for 10 years, providing cut after cut of rich, leafy green feed. Imagine a field of medica in bloom. It is a sea of small purple flowers. The bees love it, and their low hum fills the air. When cut and dried, it retains its leaves, crumbling into a nutrient-rich dust that the cattle devour with greed. Then there is the vicia, the vetch, and the farrago, a mash of barley and other grains cut while still green. These were the heavy meals, the protein shakes of the ancient world. But let us watch the feeding process in the stable. It is evening. The animals have returned from the pasture, but their work of eating is not done. The farmhands bring in baskets woven from willow, piled high with green feed. This might be leaves. In Italy, where grass could burn up in the summer heat, tree leaves were a vital source of food. Elm leaves, ash leaves, and poplar leaves were stripped from the trees by the frondator, the leaf gatherer. Picture the frondator high in an elm tree earlier that day. He sits in the crook of a branch, a small knife in his hand. Snip, rustle, drop. The leafy boughs fall to the ground with a soft whump. It is a solitary job, suspended between earth and sky. Now, those leaves are in the manger. The cattle twist their tongues around the branches, stripping the greenery. The sound is a sharp tearing, distinct from the grinding of grass. It is the sound of browsing, a primal forest floor activity brought indoors. For the oxen, the working animals, the diet is stricter. They need energy. They are given ervum, the bitter vetch, soaked in water to soften it, or perhaps a measure of crushed barley mixed with straw. The mixing is done by hand in a large wooden bin. The worker plunges his arms into the grain, turning it over and over, ensuring the mix is even. The grain runs through his fingers like coarse sand. Swish, swish. For the sheep, the menu is more delicate. They are the gourmets of the farm. They prefer the short, sweet grasses. They cannot digest the coarse reeds that a cow might tolerate. And they have a craving, a deep biological need for salt. Salt management was a ritual. The Roman shepherd would place lumps of rock salt in the troughs, or he would sprinkle salt over the dry hay. The sheep crowd around the salt lick. Their rough tongues rasp against the stone. Lick. Pause. Lick. The salt makes them thirsty, which makes them drink, which keeps them healthy. It is a simple chain of cause and effect. And speaking of drinking, we must look at the water. The Roman writers were adamant. The water must be pure. Let them not drink from a stagnant pool, they warned, where the mud has been stirred up. We go to the stone trough in the courtyard. It is fed by a lead pipe that brings water from a spring uphill. The water flows continuously, a thin, clear stream that ripples the surface of the trough. The water is cold. If you were to dip your hand in it, your fingers would ache after a moment. This is what the animals want. The cattle approach the water with a heavy solemnity. They lower their muzzles. They do not lap like a dog. They suck the water in. You can see the swallow traveling up their throats. The surface of the water bobs and sways, reflecting the twilight sky. Sometimes, in the dead of winter, the diet changes again. The mast is brought out, acorns gathered from the oak forests in the autumn. They are hard and bitter, but full of fat. The pigs usually get the bulk of this, but the cattle get their share too, crushed and mixed with bran. The sound of an ox crunching on an acorn is a loud crack, followed by a slow grind. There is a peace in watching animals eat. It is the most honest activity in the world. There is no pretense. A cow eating hay is completely absorbed in the task. Her ears might flick back and forth, listening to the barn, but her focus is on the chewing. It is a rhythmic motion, a figure-8 movement of the jaw. If you watch it long enough, your own breathing starts to match it. The shepherd moves down the line, checking the troughs. He pushes a pile of hay closer to a shy ewe. He removes a stone from the barley bin. He is the waiter, the server, the provider. Outside, the wind might be howling, rattling the tiles on the roof. But inside, with the abundance of fodder, the world is secure. The hayloft is full. The bins are deep. The animals are fed. This is the definition of wealth in the agrarian world: a full manger and a quiet beast. We can imagine the smell of the damp wool, the dry hay, the crushed grain, and the manure, all blending into a thick, warm atmosphere. It is the smell of safety. It is the smell of a system working exactly as it should. But eating is only half of the biological cycle. To maintain this health, to keep the wool thick and the milk flowing, there is another, more delicate task that the shepherd must attend to: the hygiene and the medical care of the flock. Food is the foundation, but health is the structure. In the quiet isolation of the Roman farm, there is no veterinarian to call from the city. The shepherd is the doctor, the herdsman is the surgeon, and the medicine cabinet is the earth itself. Roots, herbs, sulfur, and pitch. We enter now the domain of the medicina, the healing arts of the pasture. It is a tactile, intimate aspect of animal husbandry, requiring a steady hand and a calm demeanor. An animal knows when you are nervous. If the shepherd's hand shakes, the beast trembles. So the work is done with a slow, deliberate confidence. Let us observe the morning inspection of the sheep. The flock is corralled in a smaller pen. The shepherd moves among them, not to drive them, but to touch them. He is looking for the scab, the dread of every shepherd. It is a skin condition, itchy and painful, that can ruin the fleece and weaken the animal. He stops beside an old ewe. He sinks his fingers deep into the wool near the shoulder. He parts the fleece, exposing the pink skin to the sunlight. He runs his thumb along the skin. It is clean. He moves to the next. If he finds a patch of irritation, the treatment begins. The remedy is a pungent, sticky ointment. The recipe has been handed down for generations. A mixture of bitter oil lees, the dregs left over from making olive oil, mixed with native sulfur, and perhaps a bit of pitch pine tar. Imagine the smell. It is sharp, chemical, and earthy. It clears the sinuses. The shepherd dips a wooden spatula, or perhaps just his fingers into the pot of dark, viscous liquid. He smears it onto the skin. The sheep flinches slightly at the cold touch, then settles. The tar seals the wound, keeping out the flies, keeping out the air. It is a black patch on the white wool, a badge of care. Then there is the care of the hooves. For the heavy oxen, the hoof is their livelihood. If they cannot walk, they cannot pull the plow. The ground in the stable can sometimes be too soft, preventing the natural wearing down of the horn. So, the horn grows long, curling up, throwing the animal off balance. The armentarius leads the ox to a wooden stock or simply ties it securely to a post. He lifts the heavy leg. The ox balances on 3 legs, trusting the man. The shepherd takes a curved knife, kept razor sharp on a whetstone. He begins to pare the hoof. Scrape, scrape, scrape. It is the sound of a carpenter working on hard wood. Ribbons of grayish-white horn curl away from the knife and fall to the floor. He cleans out the frog, the soft V-shaped depression in the center of the hoof, removing impacted stones or hardened mud. He checks for thrush, a fungal infection that smells sweet and rotting. If he finds it, he packs the hoof with dried herbs and vinegar. The ox chews its cud throughout the process, gazing off into the middle distance. The rhythmic scraping seems to soothe it. When the foot is set down, the animal shifts its weight, testing the new, flat surface. It stands taller. It stands true. There are more delicate surgeries as well. Sometimes, a thorn from a blackberry bush or a splinter of wood works its way into the flesh. The extraction is a moment of held breath. The shepherd uses a pair of bronze tweezers, small and precise. He locates the intrusion. He speaks low, nonsensical words to the animal. Easy now. Steady. With a quick, fluid motion, he pulls. The thorn is out. A drop of blood appears, bright red against the dust. He wipes it away with a cloth dipped in wine. The alcohol cleanses the wound. The wine is not just for drinking. It is a disinfectant, a sacrament of healing. And let us not forget the dogs. The Canis pastoralis, the sheepdogs. They too are part of this medical rounds. They work harder than anyone. At the end of the day, the shepherd checks their paws for burrs or cuts from the rocky terrain. He pulls the ticks from their ears. The dog lies on its back, exposing its belly, submitting completely to the care of the master. It is a moment of bonding, a silent pact of mutual survival. The Roman writers speak also of the drenching. This is the administration of liquid medicine. Perhaps an animal has a cough or a fever. The shepherd prepares a concoction of beaten eggs, honey, and crushed garlic. He places it in a hollow cow's horn, the tip cut off to form a funnel. He approaches the sick animal. He wraps his arm over its neck, holding the head high. He inserts the horn into the side of the mouth, over the tongue. He pours. The animal swallows, coughing slightly. The smell of garlic and honey lingers in the air. It is a primitive medicine, but it is effective. It is based on the observation of what works, repeated over centuries. There is a preventative aspect to this care as well. In the late summer, when the flies are at their worst, the shepherd might rub the ears and noses of the flock with crushed laurel leaves or cedar oil. The scent repels the insects. The flock smells of a forest, a walking grove of aromatic herbs. This daily attention to the body creates a profound intimacy. The shepherd knows the texture of every coat, the shape of every hoof, the temperament of every beast. He notices the slightest change, a drooping ear, a dull eye, a lag in the step. He is the first line of defense against the chaos of disease. As the sun begins to set, The medical rounds are finished. The tar pot is covered. The knife is wiped clean and sheathed. The wool has been smoothed back into place. The animals are comfortable. There is no itching, no limping, just the peace of a body that is well cared for. The shepherd washes his hands in a bucket of water. The water turns dark with the dust and the grease of the day. He dries them on his tunic. His hands are rough, stained, and calloused, but they are the hands of a healer. In this remote frontier, his touch is the only comfort these creatures know. With the herd healthy and the stable secure, we can now turn to the result of all this care. The cycle of life continues, and the most crucial moment of that cycle is approaching, the season of birth. The cycle of the farm is a circle, but if it has a beginning, that beginning is birth. After the long, dark months of winter, where the world seems frozen in stasis, the arrival of new life is the slow turning of the wheel towards spring. In the Roman territories, this season, the time of lambing and calving, was known as a time of anxious hope. It is a time of sleepless nights for the shepherd, but also a time of profound quietude. Let us step into the ovelia in the dead of night. It is late February. Outside, a cold wind is stripping the last dead leaves from the oaks, but inside, the air is thick and still. The sheep are resting, a carpet of wool in the darkness. But there is a stirring in the corner, and ewe, heavy with her burden, has separated herself from the flock. This is the instinct of the wild ancestor, still alive in the domestic beast, the desire for privacy, for a safe shadow. She paws at the straw, making a nest. Scritch, scratch. She turns in circles, pressing the bedding down, creating a shallow bowl in the gold-colored stalks. The shepherd is watching. He sits on a three-legged stool near the door, a small oil lamp burning beside him. The flame flickers, casting long, dancing shadows on the stone walls. He does not interfere. He knows that silence is the best midwife. He waits, his hands resting on his knees, his breathing shallow so as not to disturb the air. The birth itself is a slow, rhythmic event. It is a struggle, yes, but a quiet one. There are low grunts, the shifting of weight, the heavy breathing of labor. And then, the arrival. A wet, slippery bundle slides into the world, steaming in the cool air. It is the Agnes, the lamb. For a moment, there is absolute stillness. The lamb lies there, a tangled heap of long legs and wet wool. Then, the mother turns. She begins to lick. This sound, the rough rhythmic rasping of the mother's tongue against the newborn's coat, is one of the most soothing sounds in nature. It is a cleaning, a massage, and a claiming all at once. With every stroke, she dries the lamb, stimulating its blood flow, waking up its muscles. She murmurs to it, a low, guttural vibration in her throat that is quite different from her usual bleat. It is a sound reserved only for this moment. The lamb shakes its head. Its ears, heavy and wet, flop against its skull. It tries to rise. The front legs go out, splayed and trembling. The back legs push. It falls. It tries again. The struggle is slow and determined. The hooves, soft and yellow like fresh wax, find purchase in the straw. Finally, it stands. It sways like a ship in a gale, but it stands. The shepherd moves now, but slowly. He might pick up the lamb if the night is particularly freezing, wrapping it in an old piece of tunic to dry it further. The lamb is incredibly light, little more than bone and spirit. He checks the ewe's udder, ensuring the wax plug at the end of the teat is gone, so the milk can flow. He guides the lamb to the mother. The search for milk is a blind, desperate fumbling. The lamb butts against the mother's flank, searching. And then, success. The tail begins to wiggle. A a frantic, joyous vibration. The sound of sucking fills the quiet corner. The colostrum, the thick, yellow first milk, flows into the new life, carrying with it warmth and immunity. In the cattle barn, the scene is similar, but on a grander, heavier scale. A cow giving birth is a mountainous event. She lies on her side, her vast bulk heaving. The Armentarius is more involved here. He might need to help, looping a soft rope around the calf's legs to gently assist the pull during a contraction. When the calf arrives, it is a giant compared to the lamb. It lands with a heavy thud. Its eyes are open, dark and liquid, taking in the dim light of the stable. The mother cow, exhausted, rests her head on the straw for a moment before beginning her ministrations. Her tongue is like sandpaper, powerful enough to rock the calf's whole body as she cleans it. The smell in the barn during this season is unique. It is not an unpleasant smell. It is the scent of birth fluids, of warm milk, of wet fur, and fresh straw. It is a raw, primal scent, heavy with life. As the days pass, the barn transforms into a nursery. The silence of the winter is replaced by a chorus of high-pitched bleats and the deeper lows of the mothers calling their young. The Roman writers advised keeping the lambs and calves separate from the mothers during the day once they were strong enough to manage the milk production. Picture a kindergarten pen in the corner of the barn. 20 or 30 lambs, all days old, huddled together. They sleep in a pile, heads resting on each other's backs. When they wake, they are filled with a sudden, bursting energy. They jump straight up in the air, sproing, all 4 legs leaving the ground at once. They chase each other in circles, practicing the skills of evasion and flight. But mostly, they sleep. A newborn spends most of its life in the dream world. They lie flat out, looking almost lifeless, completely surrendered to gravity. Their sides rise and fall with rapid, shallow breaths. The shepherd walks among them, his step careful to avoid the sleeping bundles. He is the guardian of this new generation. He checks their navels for infection. He ensures the weaker ones are getting their share of milk. He is tired, his eyes rimmed with red from the long nights. But there is a satisfaction in this fatigue. The wealth of the farm has increased. The flock has grown. The future is secure for another year. Outside, the first green shoots of the spring grass are pushing through the soil. The sun is staying out a little longer each day. Soon, the doors of the barn will be thrown open, and this tide of new life will flow out into the pastures. But for now, they are here, in the safe, warm, straw-lined womb of the stable. The world is small, consisting only of the mother, the milk, and the sleep. As the young ones gain strength, the farm begins to wake up from its winter slumber. The next phase of the cycle approaches, the production of the white gold, the milk, and the craft of turning it into sustenance. With the lambs and calves growing strong, the flow of life on the farm transforms into a flow of liquid nourishment. We enter now the era of the white harvest, the milk. In the Roman world, milk was rarely drunk fresh by adults. It was considered a childish thing, or something for the barbarians. But it was the raw material for something far more important, something that could store the energy of the grass for months. Cheese. The day begins before the sun has fully risen. The air is gray and still. We walk to the milking shed, a structure often open on one side to allow the morning breeze to carry away the animal heat. The ground here is paved with flat stones, scrubbed clean every evening. The animals know the routine. The ewes line up, a bleeding queue of patience. The shepherd sits on a low stool, his knees up. He does not hurry. He reaches for the udder, warm and heavy with the night's production. The first stream of milk hits the wooden or ceramic pail with a loud, sharp ping. As the bottom of the pail covers, the sound softens, changing to a rhythmic, muffled thrum, 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 thrum. It is a hypnotic sound. It is the metronome of the morning. The shepherd's hands move in a steady cadence, a squeeze and a release that he could perform in his sleep. The sheep stands quietly, chewing her cud, her eyes half closed. There is a transfer of warmth here, from the animal to the man, and a transfer of relief, from the man to the animal. The pail fills. A thick white foam rises to the top, trembling slightly with every new stream. The smell is sweet, creamy, and undeniably animal. It is the smell of pure sustenance. When one pail is full, it is poured into a larger vat, and the next sheep steps forward. This continues for hours. There is no conversation, only the sounds of the animals and the milk. Once the milking is done, the buckets are carried to the cassiel, the cheese-making room. This room is a sanctuary of coolness. It is usually situated on the north side of the villa, away from the sun, often semi-underground to maintain a constant, low temperature. The walls are whitewashed, the shelves are empty, waiting. The milk is poured into large bronze or terracotta cauldrons. It is still warm from the bodies of the ewes. Now, the magic begins. The cheesemaker, the casearius, adds the coagulum, the rennet. In the Roman territories, this might be rennet from a lamb, or it might be vegetable-based, made from the sap of the fig tree or the thistle flower. He stirs it gently with a wooden paddle. The milk swirls, a white vortex. Then he waits. We watch the milk sit. It is perfectly still. But chemically, a revolution is happening. The liquid is becoming solid. Slowly, the curd forms. It pulls away from the sides of the vessel, floating in the pale, greenish-yellow whey. The casearius tests it with a finger. It is firm. It breaks cleanly. He rolls up his sleeves. He reaches into the warm cauldron. He gathers the curds, squeezing them gently to release the whey. He lifts the white mass out, dripping and soft, and places it into the ficella. The ficella is a mold woven from rushes or wicker. It has a beautiful, intricate pattern. As the cheese is pressed into it, the pattern is imprinted onto the rind. It is the signature of the farm. The press is applied, perhaps a simple stone weight placed on top of a wooden board. Now, we listen. Drip, drip, drip. The whey falls from the baskets into a trough below. It is a slow, weeping sound. The cheese is contracting, becoming denser, knitting itself together. In the corner of the room, there might be a small fire pit for smoking. The Romans loved smoked cheese. The smoke curls up from burning apple wood or straw, hanging in the air like a blue mist. It wraps around the cheeses sitting on the high shelves, turning their rinds a golden brown, sealing in the flavor. Other cheeses are salted. The casearius rubs coarse sea salt over the surface of the fresh wheels. The salt draws out the moisture. It hardens the rind. It preserves the cheese against the rot. The sound of the salt being rubbed against the curd is a soft shh, like sand being brushed across stone. These shelves are a library of food. There are the soft, fresh cheeses, meant to be eaten within days with honey and bread. There are the hard, aged cheeses destined for the legions, capable of lasting for years. They sit there in the cool dark, maturing. They are time capsules. They are the spring grass and the summer herbs, transformed into solid blocks of nutrition. The work in the cassiel is precise and clean. Everything is washed. The vessels are scalded with boiling water. The floor is swept. There is a sense of laboratory precision here, but without the harshness. It is a soft, organic precision. Outside, the sun has risen fully. The day is bright and hot. But in here, it is always cool, always dim, always smelling of milk and smoke. The cheesemaker wipes his hands on his apron. He checks the rows of drying cheeses, turning one over here, wiping a spot of mold from one there. He is the curator of this silent gallery. The milk has completed its journey. It has gone from the soil to the grass, to the stomach, to the udder, to the pail, and finally, to the shelf. It is a miracle of transmutation, performed every day, without fanfare, in the quiet corners of the Roman countryside. But the animals provide more than just food. As the weather warms and the days grow long, another harvest approaches. The heavy winter coats of the sheep begin to itch. It is time for the shearing. The sun now stands high in the sky, marking the arrival of late spring. The air is warm, buzzing with the sound of insects. The grass in the lower pastures is starting to turn a golden yellow. For the sheep, the heavy fleece that kept them warm through the biting winter winds has become a burden. It is itchy, hot, and heavy. It is time for the tonsura, the shearing. This is not a day of quiet contemplation, but a day of communal labor, a festival of the harvest. Yet, even in its busyness, there is a rhythmic, hypnotic quality to the work. It is the dismantling of a winter coat, the peeling of the fruit to reveal the seed. The shearing floor is prepared. It is a clean, paved area, perhaps in the shade of a large oak tree or under a purpose-built awning. The ground is swept until not a speck of dust remains, for dirt is the enemy of fine wool. The sheep are brought in from the washing. A few days prior, they were driven into a stream, the water turning milky with the dirt and grease of a year's grazing. Now, they are dry, their fleece fluffy and expansive. They huddle together, a cloud of white grounded on the earth. The shearers arrive. These are often specialists, men who travel from farm to farm with their tools. The Roman shears, the forfices, are simple, elegant instruments. They look much like modern garden shears, two iron blades connected by a C-shaped spring handle. They are black, oiled, and terrifyingly sharp. Watch the first shearer. He steps into the pen and selects a sheep. He does not grab it roughly. He maneuvers it, tipping it onto its rump. The sheep sits there, leaning back against the shearer's legs, its front hooves dangling in the air. It looks surprised, perhaps a little undignified, but it is calm. The position immobilizes it. It stops struggling. The shearer bends over. Click, click, click. The sound of the shears is the soundtrack of the day. It is a rapid, metallic chatter. The blades slide under the wool, close to the pink skin, but never cutting it. The fleece falls away in a single, continuous sheet, like a heavy blanket being rolled down. The shearer works with a practiced geometry. He starts at the brisket, opens up the neck, goes down the shoulder, along the flank. He turns the sheep, manipulating it like a doll. The sheep's head lolls to the side, eyes wide, submitting to the haircut. The air is filled with dust motes dancing in the shafts of sunlight that pierce the tree canopy. The smell is intense, the raw, greasy scent of lanolin. It coats the shearer's hands, making them soft and waterproof. His arms glisten with sweat and sheep oil. As the fleece falls away, the sheep underneath is revealed. It looks startlingly small, naked, and white. It is a transformation. The majestic, round creature of the winter is gone, replaced by this slender, vulnerable animal. A boy, the fleece gatherer, rushes forward. He gathers the fallen wool, rolling it into a tight bundle, the cut side out. It is warm to the touch, retaining the heat of the animal's body. He carries it to the weighing station. The Roman obsession with accounting is present even here. Each fleece is weighed. The quality is noted. Is it the fine, soft wool of Tarentum or the coarser wool of the northern provinces? Is it pure white or is there a gray tinge? The stylus scratches on the wax tablet, recording the wealth. The shorn sheep is released. It scrambles to its feet, shaking itself. It feels light, perhaps too light. It trots back to the group of shorn comrades. They look at each other, strangers in their new bodies. They bleat, a sound that seems louder now without the muffler of the wool. The pile of fleeces grows. It is a mountain of soft, greasy wealth. This is the raw material for the tunics of the legions, the togas of the Senate, the blankets of the poor. It is the fabric of the empire, harvested here in the dust and the heat. For the shearers, the work is backbreaking. They are bent double for hours, but there is a flow to it. Grab, sit, click, 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 release. Grab, sit, click, 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 release. It is a dance of iron and wool. Midday comes. The work stops. The men sit in the shade, wiping their brows. They eat bread and cheese, the very cheese made in the shed nearby, and drink watered wine. The talk is low, murmuring about the quality of the clip, the price of wool in the market, the weather. The sheep, shorn and unshorn, rest in the heat. The afternoon wears on. The shadows lengthen. The pile of wool is now taller than a man. The last sheep is finished. The shearing floor is covered in short tufts of white fluff, looking like a light snowfall in summer. The shearers pack their tools. They wrap the blades in oily rags to prevent rust. They are paid, perhaps in coin, perhaps in wool. The farmer looks at the pile. He sees his profit, but he also sees the successful completion of a duty. The flock is comfortable for the summer. The cycle is honored. The sun sets, casting a golden light over the naked flock. They look ghostly in the twilight, pale shapes against the darkening grass. They will be cold tonight, for the first time in months. The shepherd will guide them into the warmest barn, piling the straw high. The noise of the click, click, click fades from the ear, leaving a ringing silence. The dust settles. The smell of the lanolin lingers, a heavy, earthy perfume that hangs over the farm. The wool is harvested, but it is raw and dirty. Its journey has just begun. But for the animals, the hard work of the year is done. Now, the season of movement begins. The grass in the valley is drying up. The mountains are calling. The shearing is done. The wool is stored. But the earth does not pause. In the lowlands, the Italian summer has arrived with its full, oppressive weight. The sun is a relentless hammer, beating down on the plains of Apulia and the coastal fields. The lush green grass of spring has vanished, replaced by brittle, yellow stalks that crumble to dust underfoot. The water troughs are drying up, leaving rings of white mineral deposits on the stone. The herd is restless. They know, with an ancient instinct, that the food is gone. They look towards the horizon, where the purple silhouette of the Apennine Mountains rises against the shimmering blue sky. There, in the high valleys, the air is cool, and the grass is still sweet and green. It is time for the great migration. It is time for the transhumantia. This is not a simple walk. It is a mobilization of an army of beasts. The preparations are methodical. The shepherds pack their belongings into leather satchels. Sacks of flour, skins of wine, pots for cooking, and the tools of their trade. Mules are loaded with the heavier equipment, the tent poles, the netting for temporary pens, and the supplies of salt. The journey begins at dawn, but a dawn that is already warm. The gates are opened. The lead animals, often old goats or wethers, castrated rams, who know the way, step out. They wear the tintinnabulum, the bell. Listen to that sound. Clank, 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 clank. It is a dull, hollow sound made of iron or bronze. It is not musical, but it is steady. As the flock pours out onto the road, the sound multiplies. 1,000 bells ringing out of time with each other, creating a wash of metallic noise that becomes a kind of silence. It drowns out the birds, the wind, and thoughts. It becomes the only reality. They enter the calls, the great drove roads of Rome. These were not the paved military highways, the viae with their smooth flagstones. The calles were wide, grassy tracks, sometimes hundreds of feet across, protected by law specifically for the movement of livestock. They were ancient scars on the landscape, worn down by millions of hooves over centuries. The dust rises. A fine white powder kicks up from the dry earth, hanging in the air like a fog. It coats the shepherds' faces, settling in the creases of their skin. It coats the dark coats of the cattle and the freshly shorn backs of the sheep. The herd becomes a ghost army, moving through a cloud of its own making. The pace is agonizingly slow. You cannot rush a grazing animal. They snatch mouthfuls of dry grass as they walk. The cattle plod forward, heads low, swaying with a heavy momentum. The sheep trot in bursts, then stop, then trot again. The dogs flank the column, their tongues lolling out, trotting back and forth, creating an invisible wall that keeps the flock on the track. The sun climbs to its zenith. The heat is a physical weight. The air shimmers above the road, distorting the view ahead. The only relief is the occasional shade of a roadside umbrella pine or a grove of old oaks. When they pass under the trees, the temperature drops for a few seconds, a brief, delicious respite before they are thrust back into the glare. The shepherds walk in silence. There is no need for words. A whistle, a gesture with the staff, a sharp "hey" is all that is needed. They are in a trance of movement. Left foot, right foot, staff. Left foot, right foot, staff. The rhythm of the walk takes over the mind. The world narrows down to the heels of the person in front of you and the swaying rumps of the animals. They pass through villages where the locals come out to watch the river of animals flow by. They pass lonely shrines dedicated to Pales, the goddess of shepherds, or Sylvanus, the god of the woods. A shepherd might toss a handful of grain or pour a few drops of wine onto the altar as he passes, a small insurance policy for a safe journey. As the days pass, the landscape begins to change. The flat horizon of the plain gives way to the rolling foothills. The road begins to climb. You can feel the change in the muscles of the legs. The air starts to thin, losing that heavy, humid thickness of the lowlands. It becomes crisp. It smells of pine resin and crushed wild mint. The evenings on the road are a different kind of world. The flock is halted in a designated resting place, a statio. Temporary nets are set up to keep them contained. The fires are lit. Imagine the scene at dusk. The sky is a deep, bruised purple, fading to black. The stars begin to pop out, brighter and sharper than they ever appear in the city. The fire crackles, the smoke drifting up to join the Milky Way. The shepherds sit around the flames, cooking a simple porridge of pulse, spelt wheat, flavored with a bit of pork fat or cheese. The dogs lie near the fire, twitching in their sleep, dreaming of wolves. The animals settle down. The bells stop ringing, replaced by the sound of cud chewing and heavy breathing. It is a massive collective sleep. The ground itself seems to vibrate with the heartbeat of the herd. But the night is not unguarded. The watch is set. The wolves are always there, in the imagination, if not in reality. A shepherd stands at the perimeter, leaning on his spear. He looks out into the darkness. He listens. He hears the hoot of an owl, the rustle of a badger, the wind in the trees. He is the guardian of the sleep. This migration can take weeks. It is a life lived entirely in the between. They are no longer of the farm and not yet of the mountain. They are creatures of the road. As they climb higher, the vegetation changes. The dry yellow gives way to patches of green. Water becomes more plentiful, clear, cold streams rushing down from the peaks. The animals smell the water before they see it. Their pace quickens. They push forward, eager for the coolness. Finally, they crest the last ridge. Below them lies the summer pasture, a vast bowl of emerald green, dotted with wildflowers, yellow buttercups, blue gentians, red poppies. The air is cold, requiring a cloak even at midday. The silence here is profound, vast, and empty. The herd spills down into the valley like water breaking a dam. They spread out, no longer a column, but a fan. They lower their heads and begin to eat. This is the promised land. This is the reward for the dust and the heat. The shepherds set up their summer camp, rough huts made of branches and turf, or perhaps a stone shelter used year after year. They are far from civilization here. They are alone with the sky and the grass. The journey is over. The long, slow summer of the high mountains has begun. But up here, in the wilder air, the rules are different. The dangers are different. The shepherd must transition from the farmer of the plains to the warrior of the peaks. The sun dips below the jagged peaks of the Apennines. The light dies quickly up here in the high pastures. One moment, the valley is bathed in a cold, hard gold. The next, it is plunged into a twilight of blue and gray. The temperature plummets. The wind, which had been a playful breeze during the day, finds its teeth. It hisses through the rocks and the stunted mountain pines. This is the hour of the wolf. In the lowlands, the farm was a fortress of stone walls and heavy gates. But here, the walls are made of air, shadow, and vigilance. The safety of the flock depends entirely on the living guardians, the Canis pastoralis, the shepherd dog. Let us look at these dogs. They are not the playful pets of the city villas. They are not the sleek hunting hounds of the aristocracy. They are beasts of war. The Roman writers, ever practical, advised that the sheepdog should be white. Why? So that in the confusion of a night attack, the shepherd does not mistake his dog for a wolf and strike it down. Picture a massive white dog lying near the dying embers of the fire. He is large, perhaps of the Molossian breed, with a heavy chest, a thick neck, and a broad head. His eyes are closed, but his ears are twitching, rotating like radar dishes, catching sounds that the human ear cannot register. The snap of a twig 100 yards away, the soft panting of a predator, the shift of the wind. Around his neck, he wears the melium. This is a collar of thick, cured leather, studded with sharp iron spikes. It is a brutal piece of jewelry. The Romans knew that wolves attack the throat. If a wolf bites the neck of a dog wearing a melium, it bites into iron. It is a passive defense, a shield of spikes. The shepherd sits nearby, wrapped in his heavy cloak, the sagum. He does not sleep. He is the speculator, the watcher. Beside him lies his weapon. It is not a sword, but a sling, the funda. It is a simple strap of leather with a pouch in the middle. Beside it is a pile of smooth, round river stones, gathered days ago for this specific purpose. The darkness is absolute now. The sheep are huddled in a tight mass, a single entity of anxiety. They sense the vulnerability of the night. Somewhere out there, beyond the circle of the firelight, there are eyes watching. The wolf, the lupus, is a creature of patience. It circles the flock, testing the perimeter, looking for a straggler, a weak point, a gap in the vigilance. The dog lifts his head. He does not bark. A bark is a warning, but a growl is a promise. A low, rumbling vibration starts deep in his chest. It is a sound felt more than heard. It is the sound of a tectonic plate shifting. The hair on his back, the hackles, stands up in a rigid ridge. The shepherd follows the dog's gaze. He sees nothing but blackness, but he trusts the dog. He picks up his sling. He places a stone in the pouch. He stands up slowly, so as not to spook the sheep. He begins to swing the sling. Whir, whir, whir. The sound cuts through the wind. It is a rhythmic, mechanical hum. He releases one end of the strap. Snap. The stone flies into the darkness, whistling as it goes. It strikes a rock in the distance with a sharp clack. It is a warning shot. It says, "We are awake. We are armed. Go elsewhere." Silence returns. The dog lowers his head, but his eyes remain open. The tension holds the air like a taut wire. This is the nightly standoff. It is a game of presence. The predator measures the risk against the hunger. Tonight, the risk is too high. The shadow moves on. The shepherd sits back down. He adds a log to the fire. Sparks fly up, swirling into the vast, indifferent universe of stars above. The Milky Way is a bright slash across the sky, a celestial road mirroring the earthly track they traveled to get here. In this high isolation, the bond between the man and the dog is absolute. They share the food. They share the warmth. They share the danger. The Roman agriculturalists wrote that a shepherd must treat his dog as a companion, not a slave. Speak to him, they said. Praise him when he does well. And so, the shepherd reaches out a rough hand and strokes the dog's heavy head. The dog leans into the touch, a brief moment of softness in a hard life. The night wears on. The constellation of the Bear rotates slowly around the pole star. The cold seeps into the bones. It is a time for thinking, or for not thinking. The mind empties out, filled only with the simple inputs of the senses, the smell of wood smoke, the warmth of the fire, the sound of the wind. Occasionally, the silence is broken by the flock. A sheep coughs. A lamb bleats in a dream. The sound is comforting. It is the sound of life continuing. In these mountain pastures, there are other dangers too. Brigands, runaway slaves, desperate men who would steal a sheep for meat. Against them, the shepherd carries a pedum, the throwing stick, or a spear. The pastoral life here touches the edge of violence. It is a reminder that the Pax Romana, the Roman peace, was maintained at the edges by men like this, men willing to stand in the dark and hold the line. But tonight, the brigands do not come. Only the wind visits the camp. As the first gray light of dawn begins to bleed into the eastern sky, the tension breaks. The dog stands up, stretches his front legs, and shakes his body, the iron spikes of his collar jingling. The birds begin to sing, a tentative chorus at first, then gaining strength. The shapes of the mountains re-emerge from the dark, purple, and majestic. The frost on the grass glitters like diamond dust. The sheep begin to stir, rising one by one, shaking the dew from their fleeces. The long watch is over. The sun hits the peaks, turning them pink. The warmth returns. The terror of the night evaporates like the morning mist. The shepherd rubs his eyes. He is tired, but the flock is safe. Not a single head is lost. He takes a piece of hard cheese from his bag and breaks off a chunk for the dog. They eat together in the sunrise. The cycle of the day begins again. The grazing, the wandering, the peace. But they know, and we know, that the night will come again. The summer passes in this rhythm of vigilance and grazing. But as the days shorten and the first snows threaten the peaks, another transition must occur. The harvest of the flock is not just wool and milk. There is a final, heavier harvest that must be addressed. The high summer in the mountains is a brief golden dream. As August turns to September, the light changes. It becomes lower, sharper. The shadows in the valleys stretch earlier in the day. The wind carries a new scent, the smell of dying leaves and approaching frost. The grass, once a vibrant emerald, begins to turn the color of straw. The flock senses it. The cattle become restless, lifting their heads to sniff the northern breeze. The sheep huddle closer together even during the day. The season of the descensus, the descent, is approaching. But before the great return to the lowlands, there is a somber duty to be performed. The Roman farm is not a charity. It is an engine of production. And the final product is meat. We must look at this with the dispassionate eye of the ancient Roman. To them, the sacrifice of an animal was a pivot point between the sacred and the profane, between the favor of the gods and the sustenance of the people. The selection is made in the cool light of the afternoon. The shepherd moves through the herd. He is looking for the animals that will not make the journey back. The old ewe whose teeth are worn down and can no longer graze effectively. The wether who has grown fat on the mountain herbs. The steer who has reached his full size. It is a quiet selection. There is no chasing, no panic. The chosen animals are separated into a wooden pen constructed near the camp. They are given the best fodder, the last of the sweet clover, a handful of salt. They are treated with a reverence that borders on apology. In the Roman world, the slaughter was often ritualized. Even out here in the wilds, the act retains a ceremonial quality. A small altar of turf is built. A fire is kindled. The shepherd acts as the priest for his small community. He sprinkles mola salsa, salted flour, on the animal's head. The animal shakes its head, seemingly nodding assent. This nod was crucial. It absolved the human of guilt. The victim must be willing. The act itself is swift. We need not dwell on the gore, for the Romans did not dwell on it as horror, but as necessity. A single practiced strike. The blood is collected. It is life. It is poured onto the altar for the gods, and the rest is used for black puddings, essential nutrition for the coming march. Then comes the work of the butcher. The carcass is hung from a strong branch of a beech tree. The skinning is a slow, careful process. The hide is valuable. It must be removed without cuts or tears. The knife works between the skin and the flesh, a soft, tearing sound. Scritch, rip, scritch. The hide is salted immediately. It is folded and stacked, destined to become leather for sandals, for armor, for tents. The meat is butchered. In the high mountains, where the air is cool and dry, much of this meat will be preserved. It will be smoked over slow fires of juniper wood, turning it dark and hard. Bucalatum, or jerky, that will last through the winter. The smell of the smokehouse, or the simple smoking tent, is rich and savory. It masks the metallic scent of the slaughter. It signals preparation for the lean times ahead. The fat, the sebum, is rendered down into tallow. It bubbles in a cauldron, turning into a clear, golden liquid. This will be used for candles, for waterproofing boots, for salves. Nothing is wasted. The bones are cracked for marrow or saved to be ground into fertilizer. The horns are kept for crafting, for combs, for handles, for musical instruments. This moment of harvest is the closing of a loop. The grass of the mountain, eaten by the animal, has become the flesh of the animal, which now becomes the strength of the man. It is a transfer of energy. As the butchery concludes, the camp prepares to move. The atmosphere is different from the ascent in the spring. Then there was anticipation, a lightness. Now there is a heaviness. The satchels are fuller with cheese and cured meat. The flocks are heavier with wool and fat. The men are leaner, hardened by months of mountain walking. The descent begins. The gravity assists them now. They flow down the slopes, leaving the empty high pastures to the wind and the coming snow. The silence of the mountains reclaims the space behind them. The journey down is often faster, driven by the weather chasing their heels. The leaves on the trees they pass are turning, gold, russet, crimson. The vineyards in the foothills are heavy with purple grapes, ready for the vintage. The world is ripe. They reach the statio, the resting points, and meet other herds coming down from other valleys. It is a convergence of rivers of livestock. The nights are louder now, filled with the greetings of shepherds who haven't seen each other since spring. They share stories of the wolves, of the storms, of the ghosts seen on the ridges. Wineskins are passed around. The smoke of 100 fires rises into the autumn air. But there's also a sadness. The freedom of the high places is ending. The confinement of the winter barns awaits. The strict rules of the estate, the oversight of the villicus, the farm manager, the proximity to the cities. It all looms closer with every mile. When they finally reach the lowlands, the landscape has changed. The fields that were green stubble when they left are now brown, plowed earth, waiting for the winter wheat. The air is thick and humid again. The return to the Villa Rustica is a homecoming. The heavy wooden gates swing open. The dogs run ahead, barking, greeting the farm dogs. The smell of the stable, that old, familiar smell of manure and straw, hits them. It smells like safety. The animals file into their winter quarters. The sheep to the ovilia, the cattle to the bubilia. They find their stalls. They settle into the deep bedding. The long march is over. The bells are removed from their necks. The silence of the barn descends. The shepherd unslings his pack. He leans his staff against the wall. He is tired in a way that goes down to the marrow. He has walked hundreds of miles. He has delivered the flock. He has brought the wealth home. He walks to the farmhouse kitchen. A fire is burning in the hearth. There is hot food, fresh bread, and the noise of family. He sits down. He stretches his legs toward the fire. The floor is solid and flat beneath his feet. It feels strange after months of uneven ground. Outside, the first rain of autumn begins to fall. A steady, drumming rain. It washes the dust of the road from the roof tiles. It turns the fields to mud. But inside, everything is dry. Everything is stored. The cycle is complete. The year of the herd is done. But for the Roman agriculturalist, the work of the mind never ceases. With the animals secure, the focus shifts to the economics of the operation, the markets, the trade, and the profit that justifies all this labor. The barn is quiet, but the ledger is loud. The animals have been raised, the wool shorn, the cheese pressed, and the surplus meat cured. Now, the quiet labor of the field must be translated into the hard reality of silver and bronze. We leave the solitude of the Villa Rustica and travel to the place where silence goes to die, the market. It is the day of the Nundinae, the market day that occurred every 8 days in the Roman calendar. It is a rhythmic pulse of commerce that beat through the heart of the empire. We load the wagon in the gray pre-dawn. The heavy wooden wheels are greased with animal fat to silence their squeaking, but they still groan under the weight of the goods. Bales of wool, stacked high and tied with hemp ropes, rounds of pecorino cheese wrapped in leaves, hides stiff and salty, and perhaps a few choice calves or lambs tied loosely to the back, destined for the city butchers or the temple sacrifices. The journey to the town is slow. The oxen pulling the cart set a plodding pace. Clop, clop, creak. The road is busier now. We join a stream of other farmers, other carts, all flowing toward the same center. There's a camaraderie in the dust, a shared purpose. We arrive as the town is waking up. If we are near Rome, we might be heading to the legendary Forum Boarium, the cattle market nestled beside the Tiber River. This is the oldest market in the city, a place steeped in the smell of livestock and history. The Temple of Hercules. Victor, round and columned, watches over the trade. Hercules, the guardian of cattle, the patron of the deal. The market is a sensory wall, but let us observe it as if we are watching from behind a pane of thick glass, muffling the noise into a low, continuous hum. The air smells different here. It does not smell of grass and earth. It smells of unwashed bodies, of frying sausages from the Popina, street bars, of spices from the east, and the metallic tang of money. We find our spot. We unload the wool. The merchants approach. These are men of the city, clothiers, fullers, traders. They do not look at the sky, they look at the goods. They run their hands over the fleeces. They pull at the fibers, testing the strength, the crimp, the grease. They are looking for the washed wool versus the greasy wool. The haggling begins. It is a ritual as old as the hills we just left. The farmer names a price. The merchant laughs, feigning shock. He offers half. The farmer looks away, insulted. They talk about the weather, the war on the frontier, the price of grain. Slowly, incrementally, the numbers move toward the center. It is a boring dance of numbers. 10 sesterti, 12, 11. Finally, a hand is extended, a clasp of forearms. The deal is struck. The sound of the payment is the sound of civilization. The heavy leather purse is untied. The coins are poured out onto the wooden table. Chink, chink, chink. Silver denarii, bright and small. Bronze sesterti, large and heavy. The face of the emperor stares up from the metal, a stern profile stamped into the wealth of the land. The farmer counts them slowly, sliding each coin across the wood with a calloused thumb. He bites a silver coin to test its purity. It is a moment of total focus. The abstract effort of the year, the freezing nights, the sweating days, the wolf watch, is now sitting in a small pile of metal. We move to the livestock pens. Here, the noise is more chaotic. The lowing of cattle, the bleating of sheep, the squealing of pigs. The animals are crowded. They press against the wooden slats of the enclosures, eyes wide, confused by the city. The buyers here are different. There are the butchers, looking for meat. There are the priest's assistants, looking for the perfect, unblemished white steer for a sacrifice to Jupiter. And there are other farmers, looking for breeding stock to improve their own herds. Watch the sale of a bull. The buyer walks around the immense animal. He checks the teeth to determine the age. He feels the thickness of the neck. He smacks the rump to test the muscle. The bull tolerates it, perhaps sensing that his fate is no longer in the hands of his familiar shepherd. The exchange is made. A rope is handed from one man to another. Ownership transfers. It is a strange concept, really, that a living, breathing creature can belong to a man and then belong to another, simply because pieces of metal changed hands. But this is the foundation of the Roman world. As the sun climbs high and the heat of the market intensifies, the energy begins to flag. The shouting softens. The crowds thin out. The carts are empty now, lighter. The farmer visits the stalls of the city merchants. He becomes the buyer. He buys what the farm cannot produce. Iron tools from the blacksmith, new shears, a new plowshare, salt from the coast, pitch for sealing the roofs, perhaps a piece of fine pottery for his wife, or a toy for his child. He stops at a thermopolium, a hot food counter. He buys a cup of wine, warm and spiced, and a loaf of city bread, white, soft, very different from the coarse country loaf. He stands in the shade of a colonnade, watching the river flow by. The Tiber is thick and green, carrying barges laden with grain from Egypt and oil from Spain. He realizes perhaps how small his part is in this vast machine. His flock is just a drop in the ocean of the empire's hunger. But it is his drop, and he has done his part. The purse in his belt is heavy. The cart is light. The sun is setting, casting long shadows across the cobblestones. It is time to leave the noise behind. The journey home is quiet. The oxen know they are going back to the stable, and they walk with a bit more purpose. The farmer nods off on the bench, lulled by the rhythm of the road. Clop, clop, creak. Behind him, the city lights begin to twinkle, a galaxy of oil lamps. But ahead, there is only the dark shape of the hills and the promise of a silent bed. The market day is done. The commerce is finished. The coins are counted. We return to the farm, where the cycle does not end, but simply changes gear. For in the Roman mind, the farm was not just a business, it was a moral universe, a place where religion and agriculture were inextricably bound. We return from the noise of the market to the profound silence of the farm. But the farm is not empty. To the Roman mind, the fields, the stables, and the woods were crowded places. They were inhabited not just by animals and men, but by a multitude of invisible forces, the noumena. The success of the herd depended not only on the grass and the water, but on the goodwill of these unseen neighbors. And so, we enter the spiritual life of the shepherd. It is a life of rituals, of small gestures repeated with the same boring precision as the milking or the shearing. It is a contract, duat des. I give so that you may give. Let us step into the farmhouse, into the atrium. In the corner stands the lararium, the shrine to the household gods. It is a small niche painted with snakes and garlands. Inside stand small bronze figures, the lares and penates, the guardians of the food store and the family line. Every morning, before the shepherd goes to the flock, a small offering is made here. A pinch of salt, a piece of spelt cake, a few drops of wine. The flame of the oil lamp flickers, illuminating the bronze faces. It is a quiet moment of connection, a grounding before the day begins. But the real religion of the husbandman happens outside, under the open sky. Consider the lustratio, the great purification of the fields. This was a ceremony of boundaries, a way of drawing a spiritual line in the dirt that disease and wolves could not cross. Imagine a procession moving slowly along the perimeter of the estate. It is a calm, solemn parade. Leading the way is the farmer, his head covered with a fold of his toga. Behind him come the victims: a pig, sus, a sheep, ovis, and a bull, taurus. This is the suovitaurilia, the most sacred of agricultural sacrifices. The animals are not struggling. They are led by attendants. They are dressed for the occasion. Their horns are gilded or wrapped in wool ribbons, the viti. Garlands of flowers, vervain and rosemary, hang around their necks. They look like walking altars. The procession moves at a walking pace. Step, step, pause. They must circle the entire property 3 times. It takes hours. They walk past the boundary stones, the termini, which are themselves considered gods. These moss-covered stones mark the edge of the world that matters. To move one is a crime. To honor one is a duty. As they walk, the farmer chants. It is a low, rhythmic mumble, a formula of words that must be said perfectly. If he stumbles over a syllable, he must stop and start again. The gods do not tolerate sloppiness. Father Mars, he intones, invoking Mars not as the god of war, but as the ancient protector of agriculture. I pray and beseech thee, that thou mayest be propitious and well disposed to me, our home, and our household. He asks Mars to turn away. Seen and unseen diseases, barrenness and destruction, ruin and unseasonable influence. He asks for the corn to grow and the herds to flourish. The sound of the chant blends with the wind in the trees and the lowing of the bull. It is a hypnotic incantation, weaving a net of protection around the land. When the circle is complete, the sacrifice is made. The smoke rises. It is a thick, white column ascending straight to the heavens. The smell of burning wood and roasted meat fills the air. The Romans believed the gods fed on this smoke. It was their sustenance. By feeding the gods, the farmer ensured the gods would feed him. There are specific festivals for the shepherds, too. The most important is the Perilia, held on the 21st of April. This is the birthday of Rome itself, a city founded by shepherds. On this day, the work stops. The focus shifts to purification. The sheep pens are swept clean. The old straw is raked out. The fences are repaired. The shepherd sprinkles the ground with water, washing away the dust of the year. Then, as evening falls, the fires are lit. These are not cooking fires. These are bonfires of straw and hay arranged in rows. The smoke is thick and pungent. The shepherd drives the flock through the smoke. The sheep bleat, confused by the haze, but they run through. The smoke is believed to purge them of evil, to kill the ticks, to ward off the contagion. And then the humans follow. The shepherds, the farmhands, even the children, jump over the burning piles of straw. Leap, land, leap, land. It is a moment of joy, but a restrained, ritualistic joy. It is a cleansing by fire. After the jumping, a feast is laid out on the grass. Simple food, milk, millet cakes, boiled beans. Offerings of warm milk are poured onto the ground for Pails, the goddess of shepherds. Feed the sheep at morn, the prayer goes, and let the wolf be blind. Night settles over the Perilia. The fires burn down to glowing embers. The smoke lingers in the valley, a blue fog that smells of burnt grass. The world feels scrubbed clean. The slate is wiped. The cycle can begin again. There are also the Luci, the sacred groves. These are patches of forest left untouched on the estate. No axe may touch the trees here. No sheep may graze. It is a sanctuary for the wild spirits, the fauns, and the nymphs. The shepherd passes these groves with respect. He might hear the rustle of leaves when there is no wind. He might see a shadow move. He does not investigate. He lowers his eyes. He knows that some places belong to the gods alone. This spiritual layer gives a profound weight to the landscape. The hill is not just a hill. It is the home of a local spirit. The spring is not just water. It is a gift from a nymph. The boundary stone is not just a rock. It is a sentinel. Living in this world means living in constant dialogue with the divine. It is a quiet conversation, spoken in the language of gestures, offerings, and silence. It adds a sense of purpose to the boredom. You are not just raising sheep. You are maintaining the cosmic order. You are a steward of the Pax Deorum, the peace of the gods. As the smoke of the sacrifice fades and the stars wheel overhead, the farm feels anchored. It is pinned to the earth by these rituals. It is safe. The gods are appeased. The borders are sealed. But the Roman world is not static. It is an empire of expansion, of roads, and of change. And even out here, in the timeless pasture, the influence of the wider world is felt. We must look now at the people who do this work, the social structure of the farm. The gods watch from the sky, but the Vilicus watches from the doorway. We turn now to the human architecture of the farm, the hierarchy of flesh and blood that keeps the gears of the estate turning. In the vast silence of the Roman countryside, the social structure is as rigid and durable as the stone walls of the barn. At the very top is the dominus, the master. But often, he is a ghost in his own land. He lives in the city, in Rome or Naples. He visits perhaps once or twice a year, usually during the harvest or the sheep shearing, to check the books and complain about the yield. To the shepherds, he is a distant deity, a figure of fine white togas and soft hands who arrives in a carriage, looks around with a critical eye, and then vanishes back to the world of politics and baths. The real power, the center of gravity for the farm, is the Vilicus. He is the farm manager, usually a slave himself or a freedman, but one of high status. He is the man in the middle. He stands between the leisure of the master and the labor of the field. His life is a life of counting. He counts the sheep, the tools, the jars of oil, the days until the market. Picture him sitting in his small office room, the tablinum near the entrance of the villa. A clay lamp burns on his desk. He is hunched over a wax tablet, scratching figures with a stylus. Scritch, scritch. He looks tired. His tunic is clean but practical. He wears a heavy iron ring of keys at his belt. These keys are his symbol of office. They open the granary, the wine cellar, the strong box, the sound of them jingling as he walks. Clink, clank, clink is the signal that oversight is approaching. Cato the Elder, the stern old Roman who wrote extensively on farming, had strict rules for the Vilicus. He should not be a gadabout, Cato wrote. He should be the first out of bed and the last to go to sleep. He is the clock of the farm. Beneath him are the magistri pecoris, the masters of the flock. These are the senior herdsmen, men who have spent decades with the animals. They are weather-beaten, their skin turned to leather by the sun and the wind. They know the personality of every bull, the lineage of every ram. They are men of few words, communicating often in grunts or hand signals. They command respect not through title, but through competence. And then the pastors, the shepherds, the foot soldiers of this pastoral army. In the Roman territories, these men were almost exclusively slaves, but they were a different breed from the household slaves who poured wine or dusted statues. These were men of the outdoors, chosen for their endurance. Varro advised that they should be strong, swift, and active, with limbs well knit. They had to be capable of fighting off a wolf or running after a stray lamb for miles. They look rough. They wear tunics of coarse wool, undyed and scratchy. On their feet, they wear perones, heavy boots made of raw hide, laced up to the shin. In the rain or cold, they wear the cucullus, a hooded cloak that makes them look like monks of the wilderness. Their life is one of profound isolation. A shepherd might spend weeks alone in the hills, seeing no one but his dog. This solitude breeds a specific kind of character, independent, watchful, and sometimes wild. The Romans were always a little wary of their shepherds. They were armed men, living on the fringe of civilization. But within this hardness, there is a domestic life. The shepherds were often encouraged to form unions, contubernia, with enslaved women who lived on the estate. These women were the unsung heroes of the farm. They cooked the meals, mended the cloaks, kept the chickens, and made the cheese. They created a home within the barracks. Food is the rhythm of the day. The diet is simple, repetitive, and filling. It revolves around pulse, a thick porridge made of spelt or millet. Imagine the evening meal in the slave quarters. A large cauldron hangs over the fire. The porridge bubbles heavily. Blop, blop. It is seasoned with salt, perhaps a bit of lard, or some herbs gathered from the field. The men sit on wooden benches, tired from the day. They eat from wooden bowls with wooden spoons. There is the sound of scraping, of chewing, of low conversation. They talk of the same things the dominus might talk of, but from a different angle. Not the price of wool, but the weight of the shears. Not the beauty of the landscape, but the steepness of the hill. There is also a glimmer of hope in this hard life. The peculium. This was a Roman custom allowing a slave to hold a small amount of property. A shepherd might be allowed to raise a few sheep of his own alongside the master's flock. If he tended them well, sold their wool, and saved his coins, he might, after many, many years, buy his freedom. It was a distant light, a slow accumulation of wealth that mirrored the slow growth of the herd. It gave them a stake in the system. It made them careful. At night, the villicus makes his final rounds. He checks the locks. He ensures the fires are banked. He listens to the breathing of the house. The hierarchy is asleep. The master in the city, the manager in his room, the shepherd in the bunkhouse, the sheep in the fold. It is a system of absolute order. Everyone has a place. Everyone has a role. It is unfair by modern standards, brutal even, but in the context of the ancient world, it was a functioning society. It was stable. It was predictable. There is a strange, boring peace in knowing exactly where you fit in the world. For the Roman shepherd, his place was between the earth and the sky, walking behind the animals, day after day, year after year. We have seen the land, the animals, the work, the market, the gods, and the people. Now, as our journey nears its end, we must step back and look at the legacy of this slow, quiet life. What remains of this world? The empire is long gone now. The marble columns of the Forum have fallen, broken into pieces by earthquakes and time, or burned for lime by men who forgot the names of the Caesars. The great Villa Rustica, with its tiled roofs and busy courtyards, has mostly crumbled into dust. The roof has collapsed. The walls are little more than low ridges in the earth, covered in ivy and brambles. But if you walk the hills of Italy today, in the regions of Abruzzo or Molise, you will hear a sound that defies time. Clank, clank, clank. It is the bell of a sheep. The Roman legions marched away and never returned, but the flocks remained. The great drove roads, the cals, are still there. They are now called trattori, wide, grassy highways that cut through the modern landscape. They are ghost roads, etched into the geography by millions of hooves over thousands of years. The descendants of the Roman sheep still graze these hills. The descendants of the great white dogs still watch over them, their spiked collars replaced perhaps by nylon, but their instinct unchanged. The sheepdog does not know that Rome has fallen. He does not care about the changing borders on a map. He cares only for the wolf and the flock. There is a profound comfort in this continuity. We tend to think of history as a series of explosions, battles, assassinations, revolutions. But the true history of the world is quiet. It is the history of grass growing. It is the history of animals eating. It is the history of the seasons turning, one after another, in an unbroken chain of boring, beautiful necessity. Stand in the ruins of the ancient barn we visited in our minds. The roof is gone, open to the stars. The stone troughs where the oxen drank are cracked, filled with rainwater and dead leaves. But the silence is the same silence. The wind that blows through the empty window frame is the same wind that cooled the sweat of the villicus. The animal husbandry of Rome was a machine of empire, yes. It fed the armies that conquered the known world. But at its heart, it was something simpler. It was a relationship between the human and the beast. It was a pact of care. We have walked through the mist of the morning pasture. We have sat in the warm, dusty hayloft. We have marched on the dusty roads of the migration. We have stood guard in the freezing mountain night. We have seen the wool become wealth and the milk become food. It is a slow life. It is a hard life. But it is a life that makes sense. It is grounded in the reality of the earth. There is no pretense in a sheepfold. As we end this journey, let us imagine the Roman countryside one last time. It is night. The moon is full, casting a silver light over the sleeping hills. The farmhouse is dark. The fires are out. The shepherd sleeps, his heavy cloak pulled tight around his shoulders. The dog sleeps, his head on his paws. The sheep are a soft, white stillness in the pen. The world is at rest. The great wheel of the year has turned, and now it pauses, waiting for the dawn that will surely come. But not yet. Not just yet. For now, there is only the sleep, the deep, heavy, well-earned sleep of the frontier. Drift away now. The road is behind you. The work is done. The flock is safe. Sleep. 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 Good night. If this journey through the duller side of history helped you unwind and maybe even drift off, please let me know. First, hit that like button if you enjoyed this historical lullaby. Second, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future installments of history too boring to keep you awake. Finally, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below about which historical topic you find so mundane. It deserves to be our next sleepy video. Your suggestions will shape our journey into the world's most delightfully dull past.